Cody Stamann versus Saeed Nurmagomedov. We got plus 170 on Stamann and minus 200 on Saeed Nurmagomedov. Now, this is a fight that shows you the perfect example of Russian tax being applied to a certain fighter here, especially if your last name is Nurmagomedov. There's normally two types of Dagestanis whenever they come to the UFC, right? There's the East Coasters and the West Coasters. And what I mean by that is the East Coasters normally put themselves together with Mark Henry over there in New Jersey. And those guys are, usually guys that like to go out there and strike rather than use their grappling. And then on the West Coast, you got the AKA Dagestani guys like the Khabibs and the Islams and the Umair Nurmagomedovs. Those guys like to take that grapple heavy approach more so than the striking first guys from the East Coast. Like some of the other guys that you'll find on the East Coast, Zabit, another guy that likes to align himself with Mark Henry, Timur Valiev, and obviously here you got another guy in Saeed Nurmagomedov who likes to do that as well. A lot of spinning stuff, a lot of kicking. That's kind of his game. He likes to play on the outside at kickboxing range and just kind of render his opponents useless by just staying at range, moving well, and staying that distance and using his kicks to provide him the range that he needs to stay comfortable. On the flip side with Cody Stamann, we know he has a wrestling heavy approach, but he is a very solid striker in his own right. I don't think that the striking is going to be a completed one-sided shellacking for the Saeed Nurmagomedov side. I do think that Stamann will keep it competitive. He has a decent kicking game. His boxing is ever improving as well. But I think with that range that he's going to have to deal with here, he's going to have to crash the pocket to be able to get his striking off, especially his boxing. But luckily for him, he has the wrestling here. In my advantage, he has the wrestling advantage too. I think he will be able to ground Saeed when he needs to. Maybe not be able to hold him down for long periods of time, but I do think he'll be able to land takedowns more so later in this fight, probably in the second and third round. And if he has a proper game plan and proper approach here, I think all of it is based on keeping Saeed Nurmagomedov on his back foot. I think this should be way more closer in terms of odds here, right? Minus 200 is outrageous in my opinion. Honestly, I think Stamann probably deserves to be the slight favorite in this spot, maybe like a minus 120 or minus 125, because I think this fight will be competitive. The only way it looks like a minus 200 is if Cody does not crash the pocket and if Cody does not go for takedowns. Then yes, Saeed will look great from the outside kicking and just keeping him at bay. But Stamann's he's very reliable in terms of going out there and going for takedowns. You see it over and over again against Jimmy Rivera. Obviously, the Merab Dvalishvili was just a clusterfuck of grappling considering Merab's game. The Brian Kelleher fight, I don't think he needed to go for takedowns as much in that fight as he was probably the more complete striker there, right? Brian Boom Kelleher has a ton of power in his hands, but Cody Stamann was doing a really good job in terms of getting in and getting out without taking too much damage. And that's where he was able to let his striking go because he didn't have to worry about being outranged either, right? And Brian Kelleher is pretty much the same size as him. That's why he was more so reliant on his striking in that fight. But then, more often than not, the Song Yadong fight, the Jimmy Rivera fight, all these fights are ones that he's going for takedowns. And we've seen Saeed taken down and, controlled for a little bit of time against a guy in Hani Barcelos who has comparable wrestling to Mr. Cody Stamann, in my opinion. So, this fight's going to play out much closer than the line indicates. I believe it's a perfect example of why the Russian tax is there. People see that Nurmagomedov name and they'll automatically bet him, especially if they're a casual, right? If they don't run tape, they just automatically think that this guy's going to go out there and try to go for takedowns and try to win the fight that way. They're going to be pleasantly surprised when they're seeing the American actually getting the better of the grappling exchanges, and that's exactly what I'm expecting to happen this coming weekend. So I will more than likely have a play on Cody Stamann at this spot. Plus 170 is absolute disrespect for a guy that I believe is a perennial top 10 bantamweight, and Saeed is still trying to crack his way into that. So I think he's going to have a tough task in doing so. I think Cody Stamann wins this fight on optics and takedowns, and I think that the judges give it to him. So official prediction here is going to be Cody Stamann pulling off the upset via decision.